When two people stop reaching out, it's not the absence of words that changes the dynamic. It's the shift in energy. Most people think the power lies in communication, but what truly changes everything is the vibration behind that communication. When you withdraw your energy from someone, you are no longer sending out waves of attachment, longing, or expectation. That subtle energetic pull you were constantly directing toward them begins to dissolve. And what remains is your pure, self-contained frequency. You are no longer reaching outward for validation, and that creates a magnetic field around you. This is not a game of silence or manipulation. It's the physics of energy. When you stop chasing something, the tension you were holding releases, and in that release, attraction is born. You see, energy never disappears, it only changes direction. The moment you stop contacting someone, your energy doesn't vanish into the air, it begins to circulate back into you. It refuels your sense of self-worth, your clarity, your peace. That's when you become grounded again, centered in your own presence. The other person feels this shift on a subconscious level, even without a single word being spoken. Because human beings don't only communicate through language, we communicate through frequency. When your energy moves from desperation to calm self-assurance, the other person senses it instinctively. The same energy that once made them feel crowded by your presence now draws them closer, not through pressure, but through curiosity. Silence is not empty, it's full of energy. It holds the tension of what is unspoken, the mystery of what is unresolved. When two people stop contacting each other, the mind naturally begins to fill in the blanks. Questions arise. Where did they go? Are they thinking about me? Have they moved on? This mental activity amplifies desire. It's not because the other person has changed, but because the energy field around the relationship has shifted. When you stop giving constant emotional input, you create space for the other person to notice the contrast between your presence and your absence. That space is powerful. It invites awareness, reflection, and emotional accountability. What's fascinating is that this energetic withdrawal doesn't just affect the other person. It transforms you. The very act of not reaching out forces you to confront your own need for reassurance. It makes you realize how much of your energy was tied to external responses. When you stop feeding that loop, you start recognizing your own patterns. You learn to hold your energy within yourself instead of scattering it outward. This inward redirection strengthens your vibration, and others feel it. Suddenly, people sense that you are no longer waiting, no longer grasping, no longer seeking approval. And that change in energy is magnetic. It doesn't just draw one person, it draws everything that aligns with your elevated state. The paradox is that the less you push, the more you attract. The less you talk, the more you are heard. The less you chase, the more you are remembered. Because what people crave is energy that feels calm, confident, and self-contained. When two people stop contacting each other and one of them maintains peace instead of panic, that peace becomes power. Energy that used to be spent on anxiety becomes lightness, grace, and quiet strength. The moment that happens, the game flips, not because you wanted it to, but because energy always responds to balance, and balance always attracts. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference, but in truth, it is one of the most profound demonstrations of inner strength. When you stop initiating contact, you reclaim the emotional territory you had unconsciously surrendered. You stop giving your peace away in exchange for momentary reassurance. In that stillness, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see that your happiness never depended on their response, their attention, or their presence. You realize that love or connection can exist without attachment, and that's where power is born. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without losing yourself. It is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. It is choosing calm over chaos, presence over pursuit, and self-worth over validation. When you detach, you are telling the universe that your energy is sacred. You are no longer willing to spend it chasing after something that drains you. You begin to understand that control does not come from holding tighter. It comes from letting go, because when you hold on out of fear, you communicate lack. But when you release with faith, you communicate abundance. That energetic message changes everything. You are no longer sending vibrations of desperation or dependency. Instead, your energy says, I am whole, I am fulfilled, and I am not afraid to walk alone. That is the moment the dynamic flips. The power shifts quietly, not through words, but through vibration. The one who can let go is always the one in control, because their sense of peace is not negotiable. In any connection, emotional dependency tilts the scale. The one who fears losing the other becomes reactive, while the one who feels centered becomes magnetic. Detachment restores that balance. It allows you to observe without reacting, to listen without absorbing, to feel without drowning. You stop trying to change the situation and start changing your relationship with it. You stop asking, why are they not reaching out? And instead ask, why does their silence disturb my peace? That question shifts your focus inward, where the real transformation happens. The energy that was once spent waiting, wondering, and worrying begins to rebuild your sense of power. You start to feel more grounded, more confident, more in tune with your own rhythm. And in that state, you radiate something rare, stability. People are drawn to that vibration because it feels safe, it feels strong, it feels like truth. When you detach, your communication changes even in silence. Your absence doesn't come from anger or pride, it comes from alignment. You are no longer playing the emotional tug of war, you have simply dropped the rope. And when the other person feels that, it disrupts their expectations. The dynamic that once thrived on your emotional availability now meets stillness, and stillness is powerful. It reflects back their own patterns, their own emotional dependence, their own fear of losing control. This is how energy reverses direction. The person who once felt chased begins to chase, not because of manipulation, but because your energy no longer feeds their ego. It challenges their comfort. True detachment is liberation. It's stepping out of the emotional loop that once defined your sense of self. It's reclaiming the time and space that were once consumed by overthinking and redirecting them into self-creation. The moment you stop reaching outward, your attention turns inward, and what you discover there is strength, clarity, and freedom. You begin to realize that you never truly lost power. It was just scattered in too many directions. And as it returns to you, the energy between you and the other person inevitably shifts. Because when one person reclaims themselves, the entire dynamic realigns around that power. When communication stops between two people, the silence that follows carries more weight than any conversation ever could. The human mind is uncomfortable with uncertainty, and in the absence of new information, it begins to fill in the blanks. When you stop reaching out, the other person's subconscious starts replaying the last words you said, the tone of your voice, the way your energy once felt. It replays the memories like a loop, searching for clues, for meaning, for a sense of closure that no longer exists. Silence, in that way, becomes the loudest communicator. It's a mirror that forces reflection, and reflection awakens awareness. The subconscious doesn't understand absence. It feels it as a disturbance, as something missing from the energetic rhythm it once relied on. When there's no message, no update, no presence, space is created, and that space becomes a container for curiosity, regret, and realization. People often believe that when they stop communicating, the other person simply moves on. But that's rarely how energy works. When the flow of attention is interrupted, the subconscious mind tries to restore balance. It begins to pull on old emotional threads, trying to reconnect to what was once familiar. That's when memories resurface unexpectedly. A song, a place, a smell. Each small trigger becomes a reminder that something once alive has gone quiet. The silence presses against the psyche until it demands acknowledgement. It is in that stillness that a person begins to see what they couldn't see before. How much energy they had been receiving, how much presence they had been taking for granted. The subconscious doesn't respond to logic, it responds to emotion. When you withdraw contact, you aren't punishing the other person, you're shifting their emotional frequency. The mind begins to associate your absence with uncertainty, and uncertainty creates intrigue. What was once predictable now becomes a mystery. What was once taken lightly now carries weight. This emotional imbalance ignites a form of cognitive dissonance. They want to understand why the energy feels different, why the connection feels unfinished. And that's when the emotional pendulum begins to swing. They start revisiting the moments they overlooked, the things you said that they didn't value enough, the energy you offered so freely that they assumed it would always be there. Silence, in this way, becomes the teacher that words never could. There is also a powerful internal transformation that happens on your end. When you choose silence, it's not about withholding communication. It's about mastering energy. You begin to feel the shift within yourself as well. You notice the quiet strength that comes from not reacting, the calm that emerges from restraint. You realize that your silence is not weakness, but control. The moment you stop explaining, defending, or chasing clarity, you move into a higher state of self-awareness. The energy that used to flow toward maintaining the connection is redirected toward your own stability. You stop seeking answers outside and start listening inward. That internal realignment is what amplifies your energetic presence, even in absence. And as the other person's subconscious continues to reach for the connection, what they encounter is not noise, not need, but emptiness. And that emptiness holds power, because it forces them to see that the connection's rhythm has changed. They no longer have access to your energy at will. They feel that gap as tension, as longing, as curiosity. This is how the game flips, not through strategy or manipulation, but through the silent language of energy. The subconscious reacts not to words, but to shifts in vibration. And when your energy stops chasing, it begins to draw. When it stops clinging, it begins to magnetize. The absence becomes a presence of its own, one that speaks directly to the mind and soul without ever saying a word. When you redirect your focus back to yourself, the entire vibration of your being changes. You begin to move from a place of seeking to a place of becoming. For so long, your energy may have been oriented outward, toward the other person, toward their responses, toward the idea of being chosen or validated. Every message, every waiting moment, every thought about them was a small fragment of your energy leaving your body. But when the communication stops and you stop feeding that outward flow, something sacred happens. Your energy begins to return home. You start noticing your own needs again, your desires, your peace, your rhythm. You become the center of your own orbit once more. That inward shift is not loud or dramatic. It's subtle, powerful, and deeply transformative. It's the moment you stop asking, "What are they thinking?" and start asking, "How am I feeling?" That redirection of focus changes not only how you think, but how you vibrate. Energy has frequency, and when you're consumed by someone else, your vibration is erratic, fluctuating between hope and fear, expectation and disappointment. But when your attention turns inward, your vibration stabilizes. You move into coherence, into a steady and calm, energetic state. You begin to feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of uncertainty that doesn't belong to you. You find joy in small things again, things that have nothing to do with them. That joy becomes your new frequency, and people around you feel it. The one who once drained you begins to feel the loss of that energy, because the emotional channel that once flowed so freely toward them is now quiet. Silence has replaced pursuit, and peace has replaced anxiety. That is the moment when your presence begins to speak louder than your absence ever could. When you shift your focus back to yourself, you no longer participate in the emotional tug of war. You step outside of the dynamic entirely. Your energy no longer reacts to their silence, their delay, or their confusion. Instead, you respond with neutrality, a calm awareness that is unshakable. That neutrality is magnetic because it communicates certainty, and certainty is rare. Most people operate in reaction. They mirror what they receive. But when you operate from alignment, you become the steady force in the room. The other person, consciously or unconsciously, feels that. They sense that your energy no longer revolves around them. And that realization stirs something deep within them. They begin to wonder what changed, why they no longer feel the same access to your emotional presence. That curiosity creates a gravitational pull. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean isolation. It means reintegration. You begin to invest the same attention you once gave to them into your own growth. You explore your creativity, your purpose, your boundaries. You start embodying the version of yourself that had been dimmed by overgiving. And this isn't something you can fake. Energy doesn't lie. The more you pour into yourself, the more radiant your vibration becomes. You walk differently, speak differently, even breathe differently. You start to exude a calm confidence that cannot be faked because it's rooted in genuine self-connection. The other person may not consciously understand what shifted, but they feel it. They feel the distance, not as rejection, but as transformation. They feel that you have evolved out of the emotional space where they once knew you. And because human energy seeks balance, their instinct is to move closer to the very energy that has now detached. What's truly remarkable is that as your energy evolves, you stop caring about outcomes in the same way. You stop measuring your worth by who reaches out, who stays, or who leaves. You begin to see relationships as reflections, not as definitions. Each connection becomes an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply, not to prove your value. This is when your vibration reaches its purest form, when your happiness becomes self-sourced. And from that state, everything begins to align differently. The people, experiences, and opportunities that match your new energy begin to find you. You are no longer chasing, you are attracting. You are no longer waiting, you are allowing. This is the quiet alchemy that happens when you take your energy back, when you make yourself the center of your own focus, and when you finally understand that the most powerful form of connection begins with you. When contact stops, a powerful psychological mechanism begins to unfold. The law of scarcity. It's deeply ingrained in human nature that we value what feels rare, what feels uncertain, what feels like it could slip away. As long as you were readily available, your presence was familiar, and familiarity can easily be mistaken for permanence. The moment that constant access disappears, perception shifts. Suddenly, the person who once took your presence for granted begins to feel its absence like a missing heartbeat in their routine. They start to realize that what once felt guaranteed was actually a gift, and now that it's gone, its true value begins to surface. Scarcity doesn't create false importance. It reveals it. When something becomes less available, its meaning sharpens in the mind of the one who lost it. The human brain is wired to notice contrast. When someone has continuous access to you, your words, your affection, your energy, the brain adapts. It becomes desensitized, not because of lack of care, but because of overexposure. It's only when that energy disappears that awareness awakens. Silence disrupts the pattern, and the mind starts to crave what it once overlooked. Every message left unsent, every call unanswered, every empty moment where your voice used to fill space becomes a reminder of what's missing. That absence doesn't just exist in the external world, it echoes internally. The emotional mind begins to replay memories, to long for the emotional security that your presence once provided. Scarcity activates appreciation, and appreciation deepens emotional recognition. This shift isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get. It's about allowing natural emotional balance to take place. Relationships, like energy, require polarity. Too much giving creates imbalance. Too much access creates complacency. When contact stops, the dynamic resets itself. The other person begins to confront the gap your absence leaves behind. They may try to fill it with distractions or other connections, but the energy is not the same. What once felt constant is now missing, and the space it leaves becomes charged with longing. The memory of your energy, your tone, your attention begins to take up mental real estate. The mind that once dismissed your presence now seeks it because it can no longer consume it freely. Scarcity also reveals emotional truth. It tests what was genuine and what was habitual. When someone can no longer reach you, they must decide what that absence means to them. Do they miss you out of comfort, or do they miss you out of connection? Do they seek to re-establish contact because they feel entitled to your attention, or because they have realized your unique energetic value? This internal questioning is where awareness grows. Your absence becomes their teacher, showing them what your presence really meant. Scarcity forces reflection in a way abundance never could. It transforms something ordinary into something sacred simply because it is no longer accessible. At the same time, scarcity changes you too. When you stop offering yourself so freely, you begin to feel your own worth in a deeper way. You start to see that your time, your energy, your emotional availability are valuable resources. You learn that giving without boundaries depletes you, and withholding without bitterness strengthens you. This realization doesn't come from ego, it comes from clarity. You start to appreciate your own presence as much as they once did. The stillness that follows disconnection becomes fertile ground for self-recognition. You no longer crave validation because you finally understand that what you were giving away so easily was something profoundly precious. Scarcity doesn't only make others value you more, it makes you value yourself more deeply. And in that mutual recognition of worth, energy begins to shift. The game flips not through effort, but through energetic equilibrium, where both parties finally see what the other truly brings into their world. When you stop chasing, something extraordinary begins to happen. Life starts aligning itself around you instead of you bending yourself to fit into it. The energy you once spent running after someone, trying to be seen, trying to be understood, trying to hold on to what was slipping, starts to transform into stillness. And that stillness is not emptiness, it's presence. It's the quiet knowing that what is truly meant for you will never require you to beg, force, or chase. Every time you stop pursuing what resists you, you send a clear message to the universe. I trust my own energy. That trust becomes the vibration of allowance. And allowance is what opens the doors that effort alone can never unlock. Chasing energy is rooted in fear, the fear of loss, the fear of rejection, the fear that if you don't hold on tightly enough, it will disappear. But what you chase always runs. Because chasing says to the universe, I don't have it yet, and the universe mirrors that belief back to you. When you stop chasing, you no longer vibrate from lack. You begin to vibrate from fulfillment. You are no longer trying to control outcomes. You are allowing alignment to reveal them. That shift in frequency changes everything around you. People begin to respond differently. Situations start to flow instead of resist. You become magnetic, not through effort, but through energetic coherence. When you stop fighting against what's not aligning, life begins to deliver what's actually in tune with who you are becoming. The truth is, most people chase because they think movement equals progress. They believe that doing more, reaching out more, trying harder will somehow bend reality in their favor. But the deeper wisdom is that alignment requires surrender. It's not about doing more, it's about doing less of what drains your energy. It's not about proving your worth, it's about remembering it. When you stop chasing, your energy gathers strength. It becomes focused, directed, grounded. You stop scattering it across countless external pursuits and start channeling it inward. That inward current reconnects you to your intuition, the inner guidance that always knows where you are meant to go. When you follow that guidance, you find that life unfolds more easily, that timing feels divine, that the things and people meant for you arrive effortlessly. Stopping the chase also frees you from emotional dependency. You no longer measure your value by someone else's attention or response. You stop viewing silence as rejection and start viewing it as redirection. You begin to see that your worth was never in question. It was your awareness of it that needed remembering. The moment you stop trying to force something to happen, you give life space to surprise you. The energy that once felt like loss begins to feel like liberation. You become lighter, freer, more attuned to the rhythm of your own path. And that frequency of ease is what draws real connection, real opportunity, real love. Because true alignment only occurs when you are not forcing anything to stay that doesn't want to. This is the secret shift that changes everything. When you stop chasing, you enter the flow of creation instead of the cycle of control. You begin to trust timing, trust absence, trust endings. You realize that detours are not delays, they are redirections towards something greater. You notice how life becomes more peaceful when you stop trying to make it conform to your expectations. You start receiving instead of reaching. You begin to notice that people are drawn to your calmness, to your quiet self-assurance, to your energy that no longer demands but simply exists. This is when the game truly flips, not because you mastered strategy, but because you mastered surrender. You stop chasing, and everything that resonates with your truth starts chasing you. You stop grasping, and the world begins to open. You stop needing, and what you truly desire begins to flow toward you, not out of coincidence, but out of alignment with the calm certainty that what is yours already knows how to find you.